You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Lenny Sosa got me thinking this week.
Really?
And which is kind of a fun way to start the show. Lenny Sosa got me thinking this week. He's down in Venezuela, and he is probably the MVP of that league right now.
So he's playing some winter ball down there and tearing it up?
Oh, he's playing winter ball, and he is continuing what he was doing at the end of the year and then some. I know it's against different competition, but the guy's hitting .392 with a .451 on-base percentage, a .765 slugging percentage, for an OPS of 1216. He's just lighting it up. And he's playing third base and shortstop. And it got me thinking, if a guy like Sosa, who again is only 24 years old, who again, every time he went to a different level in the minor leagues, had a period of adjustment where he didn't play very well, and when he was given consistent playing time, was able to ratchet up his play to the same level it had been at the level below. So if he's hitting 300, and all of a sudden he gets to the next level, let's say he goes from single A to double A, and he has a drop off, and then he gets enough at bats, and he gets used to it, and then he gets back up to that 300 average. That's just an example. Not exact numbers, but that's the example. So he was always doing that when he got to the majors. That was something we talked about a lot with him. Like, hey, they're really not giving him consistency, and they're really not giving him everyday at bats, and he doesn't know where he's playing at. And that was the one thing that Grady did. Lenny Sosa, if he pans out as a Major League Baseball player and a contributor on this team, it'll be because Grady Sizemore gave him that, and then you got to hope Will Venable continues it. But he's getting consistent playing time, of course, in this lower league in Venezuela, and he's playing really well. He had a great finish to his season. He's not a defensive player, but when you're looking for hits, when you're looking for home runs, when you're looking for offensive output, he's going to be a plus player for you. He's going to give you wins above replacement. He's going to be one of the few guys that can do that if he's able to take the last couple months of the season and now say, I figured out Major League Baseball. I'm going to have a full season now, consistent play. And when I think about that, I wonder, looking at where he's playing down in Venezuela, are we not evaluating the positional battles that are coming in spring training properly? Like, we look at Brian Ramos and we look at Miguel Vargas and we go, okay, well, Ramos is the guy that came from their system and has shown some life, and he's got a great attitude. The guy thinks he's the best baseball player in the world, even though he isn't. But he's got nothing but attitude, and he just wants to be a baller. You love it, right? Vargas looks like a broken man who got plenty of time out in L.A., didn't pan out, got a great pedigree, got here, ran to this show that was going on the field, and did terribly. But he's somebody that was acquired by the general manager. So historically, White Sox GMs make a move, bring a guy in, and they stick with that guy way too long. But I'm looking at Chris Getz right now, and I'm looking at Mike Tauchman being brought in. And if he really believed in guys he traded for, like DeLoach and Fletcher, he wouldn't be doing that. And so I think there might be a different mentality with this general manager, that cutthroat, what have you done for me lately? Prove it. You have to earn your spot mentality that I've been begging for years and years on this podcast. And if that exists, there's no guarantee that Lenny Sosa isn't going to take third base from Vargas and Ramos. There's no guarantee that Andrew Vaughn, with his arbitration money, even though he was given the money, isn't going to have his job ripped from him. Let's say if Sosa's able to take it from him because he's a better bat, Tim Elko has a good spring, or let's say Vargas all of a sudden comes to life and you start to believe that maybe the pedigree is going to pan out, even though it was a little late. I think we're going to have some very interesting battles come spring, and I don't think he's done adding pieces, whether they be low level or low cost, to this team.
No, he's not done. He's not done adding pieces. And you look around and the rumor mills are quiet because a lot of the guys that Chris Getz seems to be looking for are the bargain basement guys, and they're going to come off the list last. But in terms of having position wars on this team, I mean, everyone's up for grabs. Luis Robert Jr. might be the only one that really is kind of guaranteed his spot, but even he has to come out and prove that he can stay healthy. I mean, he's got to prove that he's going to rebound back to what he should be, for goodness sakes. But Lenyn Sosa, you're right. That is thought-provoking because he's an interesting guy because he's not really in the conversation. Not a whole lot anyway, and he should be in the conversation, especially if he's tearing it up in winter ball, and especially when you look at Fangraphs and the projected starting lineup, and they've got Lenyn Sosa there as the second baseman. And if you look at the 2024 stats they're listing, Lenyn Sosa had the best batting average of anybody that's still listed there. I mean, the second best is Andrew Vaughn, but Sosa's on-base percentage and slugging are right there with his, and it's just funny that you would sit there and say, well, why wouldn't Will Venable, with this team where nobody has earned the right to have anything handed to them because they were just historically awful last year, why the heck wouldn't it be that the hot hands, the guys that really are out there to play, the guys with the best attitude, the guys with the best effort, the guys with the best results are the ones that get the starting jobs and the ones that get to start the season with the benefit of the doubt of being the starters, and then let other guys, try and come after them and take them during the year if that's what it takes. I mean, if you're going to start the season with Miguel Vargas sitting at third base and Brian Ramos has a poor spring but then goes down and starts tearing it up at Charlotte, and Vargas continues to be Miguel Vargas, the major league version, Brian Ramos should be up here really, really quickly. All right.
Well, and then you also have Chase Meadroth is probably going to be your second baseman. Like, I really believe that this kid that they acquired in the deal with Boston is the guy that they want as a left-handed bat that gets on base really well and is capable of playing that position. I think has a better chance of getting that position than Sosa. Like, we've talked with Fangraphs before about how they make those lists, and they are like a loose interpretation of any kind of buzz that they get. And sometimes that list is out of town stupid. So if you go to Fangraphs right now on the roster resource and you look at the projection, that's because they're not seeing exactly what's happening with the team. I think Meadroth, who's not on the 40-man roster, gets added to the 40-man roster and is probably the second baseman. I think Colson Montgomery, his Arizona Fall League numbers, 313, 511 on base percentage, 656 slugging percentage for an 1167 OPS. God, if we can only get these guys to hit this well in the majors, wouldn't it be amazing? Like, I mean, isn't this the plight of White Sox fans? Look what this guy's doing in single A, and look what he's doing in a fall league or in a winter league or in whatever. I mean, like, if you look at what these guys have done, right? In either the fall league for Colson Montgomery or the winter baseball right now that Sosa's playing, like, you're like, oh, they're going to be amazing. It's not the same competition level, but there's a spark there. And I think the White Sox, and listening to Chris Getz, they want Montgomery at short. So I'm penciling him there. There might be a placeholder there, but Lenyn Sosa's not a placeholder, I don't believe. And I think that this kid that they acquired from the Red Sox, Meadroth, is the guy that they're looking at as possibly the second baseman. And if you're going to have Meadroth in there, and Sosa in there, and Vargas in there, and Ramos in there, and who else do we have in there? Braden Shoemake, he's got no chance. I don't even know why he's on the 40-man roster, but he's in there.
Fangraph says Brooks Baldwin, sitting there at short. Jacob Amaya, they've got sitting on the bench.
Right. And I also throw in Andrew Vaughn. And the reason I throw in Andrew Vaughn is because you can move a guy like Sosa, or you can move a guy like Vargas over the first base, Edgar Caro, and now you have Kyle Teal, two catchers. Eventually, one of them might take that job. That's not going to happen coming out of spring training. But there's no safety for Andrew Vaughn. He's lucky he got about $6 million is what he'll end up getting in arbitration. He's lucky he's going to get that. But I think that Chris Getz has restrictions on him for what he can spend. And it's harder to go to the old man and say, I want to sign somebody for $6 million this year when he's cutting payroll than to go to the old man and say, well, the powers that be, that darn arbitrator gave him $6 million, right? Oh, that stupid arbitrator gave him $6 million.
Right.
I don't think the $6 million tag for Vaughn guarantees him anything. So there's a lot of names in the pot that are all going to be fighting for jobs. And I think some of the more interesting names, that's what you want as a Sox fan. Like, if I see Brooks Baldwin playing second base, I think we're in trouble. I know some of the prospect heads like him, but I didn't see anything there that made me feel like that's the future at second base. Like, I feel like the Meadroth thing has got a better trajectory to it. I don't believe in Miguel Vargas very much, but I saw something out of Lenyn Sosa at least at the end of the year, so I'm kind of leaning towards that. I love Brian Ramos's attitude. I don't know if it's going to translate to being offensive enough to play a corner infield position at a Major League Baseball level. Like, I don't know. And I know Andrew Vaughn is not the future, no matter how much they try to tell me it. So that's the thing. You're going to be watching a lot of names, depending on which names get through. Like, if you sit there at coming out of spring training and you tell me, I've got Sosa in the infield regularly, and I got Meadroth in the infield regularly, and Colson Montgomery played really well. We're going to start him in the infield regularly, and I don't know who the fourth spot is, whether it's Ramos over at third or Vaughn over at first or Vargas at first or third or whatever. But somewhere those three guys are in there, we've had a very successful spring, and I'd be excited. Not excited like I think we're going to win anything, but I'd be excited I was going to see some kind of change and progress on my team. Wouldn't you? Because I think those are the names, if they're doing well coming out of spring or do well in spring and win those battles, I'd be most excited about. Sox in the Basement listeners, if it's time to switch to a new age of life, keeping mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living, go to Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Hyatt has stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. They work with insurance and have 0% financing for qualified individuals. If you're unhappy with your CPAP machine vendor, switch now. Get your supplies directly mailed to you. Stop into the showroom and test out the latest and greatest right there in their testing rooms. They also have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors and so much more. See everything Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has to offer at hhme.com. And I'm talking about some names that I want to see, because I feel like certain names making it through the spring and starting, newer names, are good.
You want future somewhere. Okay, you want future to factor into this somehow, some way on opening day. And I know there's games that can be played with Colson Montgomery's service time. You don't really have that anymore with Sosa. You don't really have that anymore with Ramos. Vargas spent too much time with the Dodgers for it to be an issue. But Meadroth and Montgomery, you could potentially play with it a little bit, start somebody else to start the season, then bring them up and say, okay, this is where the future comes in. Edgar Caro can fall under that same role, or Kyle Teal for that matter. I don't know if Teal's ready though, because he's rocketed through the system, but I don't think he's quite there.
I think Caro and Lee break camp.
I do too.
That's another one I'm hoping for. Like, look, we break camp. There's no Colson Montgomery. There's no Edgar Caro. Lenyn Sosa somehow isn't getting any opportunity. Meadroth is still not even on the 40-man roster. Like, I am a destroyed, upset, having a hard time turning on the television White Sox fan starting the season, right?
Look, as I'm looking at this Fangraphs page and I'm seeing, okay, Tauchman in center, cool. Or in right field, rather. Luis Robert Jr. in center, cool. Okay. Andrew Benintendi still in the starting lineup. That makes sense.
He's a starter. I wouldn't mind him being a DH, though. Like, yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing. I wouldn't mind him getting a majority of his time at designated hitter because one of these other young outfielders found their way into the order, or you went out and signed a bat that you think is flippable at the deadline. Like, I'd be okay with moving him around.
Yeah, well, and they have Austin Slater sitting on the bench. They have Zach DeLoach as the primary DH. I think Benintendi would be a much better DH in that scenario, and I think Slater would be a much better left fielder, especially if he's platooning with DeLoach. Right? Or platooning with Fletcher. So there's veteran presence is great, okay, if you're going to have it on a team that has lost. But the whole point of this is that at some point, it's got to not just be tryout time for fringe prospects. It's got to be, this is the guy that we expect to be here for the next 5 to 10 years. This is the guy that we expect to be here through his prime, and that we're going to really build around. That's the whole point of the rebuild. And
right, that's exactly what you want. Like, you don't want to see Jacob Amaya.
No.
Like, get a role on this team, a
role on the team, yes, but Jacob Amaya being anointed as a guy that has to have his job taken away from him when he has never earned anything in the major leagues would irk me.
That's the thing. Like, to me, unless a guy just comes out in spring and falls on his face, I'm ready to see new guys. I really want to see Meadroth at second base. I want to see Montgomery standing over at short. I'd prefer to see Ramos over at third, and Sosa standing at first. Like if you ask me just off of the names and because I already know what Vargas is, and I already know what Vaughn is. And like that's the thing. Like I have far more faith in the last couple of months of Sosa than I have in Andrew Vaughn ever becoming anything other than a replacement level player. And maybe that's because I got to watch Sosa go from level to level and prove himself, and Vaughn never got that opportunity. But it's time to poop or get off the pot here with Andrew Vaughn. I didn't even want him brought back in arbitration, so I clearly don't have any faith in him becoming anything else. So whether or not the numbers back it up, or people are like, well, you got to give him more of a chance, or what has Sosa done? I have more of a positive attitude seeing Lenin Sosa somewhere in that infield, seeing Colson Montgomery in that infield, even seeing Ramos get an opportunity over Vargas, because even though you traded for Vargas, he's gotten so much opportunity and done nothing with it. Unless he's tearing it up in spring training, I would not get excited about him. Like he comes out in spring training, he's hitting the ball. He's like, I have a new attitude. I just upset that I got traded. There was a lot of personal stuff going on. I'm ready. And he jump starts his career here. It's a surprise, but I'll take it. But like, that's the thing. There's certain names that it's either because I haven't seen it before, like the whole backup quarterback thing, right? The best quarterback in town is always the guy that hasn't gotten a chance yet. So like, there's a little bit of that in there, right? Like, I don't know anything about Chase Meadroth, but I can look at what he's done in the minor leagues and he hasn't let me down yet. Well,
and that's part of it too, isn't it? Isn't it when you're talking about a team that was as bad as they were last year? Honestly, the taste that you want to have rinsed out of your mouth. Like, I'm excited to see Austin Slater get at bats, even though he's a 32-year-old utility guy. Basically, I'm excited for that even being a part of my White Sox fan experience, because he hasn't let me down. He's just not a guy that has pissed me off in some fashion. And he's not a guy that I was sold was going to be great and turned out to be not. I can tell you what Austin Slater is, and I understand he was their number one free agent target, but he's established. I know what Austin Slater is. I know what we're getting as a White Sox fan out of this guy, and it's fine. It's okay. I'm not like stoked about it, but I'd rather cheer on Austin Slater at this point than sit there and cheer on guys that I looked at and for the past couple of years, and especially last year, and just watch them over and over and over again fail. And I understand that these guys all have pride and they're all professionals and stuff like that, and that may not be fair of me to say, but holy smokes, I mean, everybody needs a change of scenery after a year like that. And fans need to something else to look at. We need something else to wear the laundry for a while.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you look at this roster, nobody should be sold as a superstar. I mean, they're going to sell Luis Robert Jr. as a superstar because of what he did 2 years ago and the potential. But I'm not sold on it until he comes out and proves it for me this year. I am bitter about the way that he performed last year. I hate the way he was in the second half. I really do. I think Chris Getz hates it too. I think Chris Getz would love to move him. Like, there's going to be a lot of buzz around Robert Jr. And I think if the right thing comes along, Getz moves him. But again, he doesn't have to move him. He doesn't need to make a move with him. And I think his value goes up during the season. I think he comes back and at least in the first half of the season has a big year. And unless he gets injured, which is always a possibility with him, I think his value goes up. But I think that's something. I think our general manager is ready to move on from him as well. I don't think you have any star power on this team. You've got an everyday baseball player, professional baseball player in Andrew Benintendi that people expect to be better because of his contract and how it's the biggest one ever handed out by the team, even though that's an average contract in Major League Baseball. Guys are getting those left and right in free agency right now, and they've been getting them that way for years. But so he's not a star. Nobody else on this team is a star. There's not a position player on this team who's a star. You just traded away your only star pitcher. You have no stars on this team. So now with no stars on the team, I want accountability. I want the best player out there, and I want to see new faces because the guys I've already seen, especially for the last couple of years who haven't done it, I'm done looking at them. They are what they are. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And that's what I'm really hoping that they're doing with their evaluation. They understand who's a duck on this team.
Yeah, and I'd almost rather have a bunch of geese so we can get the duck out of here. But it's one of those where the star power, you mentioned this, and can we talk about Luis Robert Jr. as a superstar for a second? Like, I understand he's got tools. I get that. But I'm looking at his career stats. And in 2020, he comes up, he ends up hitting 233, 11 homers. It's a 56-game season. He does that swoon. He goes away for a while there and just completely vanishes. But then we see him hit just an ungodly bomb against Oakland, right, in the postseason. And we sort of are like, well, okay, I can see what happens here. 2021, he hits 338, 13 homers, only 68 games. Okay, so again, relatively small sample size. That's really the only taste we've gotten, I think, of Luis Robert Jr. showing me superstar stats. Because 22, 98 games, he hits 284 with 12 homers. And his best season, 2023, he plays 145 games. He only hits 264, right? The OPS is good. It's in the 800s. It's not stellar. He hits the 38 bombs, which is good. Really, really good, and not something that happens as frequently as it once did. He steals 20 bases, so he's in the 2020 club. These are all good things, but are they really superstar stats? Is this guy really what Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams made him out to be? Because this isn't Juan Soto level of stuff. This isn't like,
no.
He's not a comp for really any of the guys that you sit there and you say are superstars.
Yeah, it's always been that way. He's always been the hype of he's a superstar, and you see flashes of it. I mean, look, you can go watch him in person out there. I've done it. He's amazing.
Oh, like I said, the athleticism is off the charts. The tools are definitely there, but superstar means you actually perform.
Right, and that's the problem. He does not consistently perform over a 162-game schedule. He's had 1 year where he did it, at least enough. And then when that year was over, he said, okay, sky's the limit because he's going to do better than that, right? Like if that's his peak year, it's a failure. He needs to do better than that. He needs to still have his better years still in front of him. And that's what the White Sox gave him that contract for with the $20 million a year options for 2 years on the back end because they believed they were getting a discount on these really good years he was going to be having during those. And so this is it. I mean, I feel like this is like the make or break season for Luis Robert Jr. You're either going to become one of those players or you're not. You know, you may have a flash in the pan season. You may have a year 30 season where he hit 45 home runs and everybody's like, oh, he's amazing. And then you'll slide back to what you are. There's a lot of ball players like that. A lot of guys that'll have like 1 or 2 really good years and a bunch of crap in the middle of it. He has never been able to put the consistency together. And so that's the thing, though. This team will call him a superstar for marketing purposes if he's on the team. Like that's what he's going to be. He is the face of the team, which is going to be really hard to sell to Sox fans who watched the games last year. Because you're going to sit there and say, okay, well, I get that he's got the tools, but I also watched him disappear. You're going to show me a picture of him looking ready to play. I'm going to remember the picture of him sitting on the bench, rolling his eyes and looking like he was going to fall off the bench because he was disgusted. Like those images aren't going away. Which is probably one of the reasons why you're having such a hard time getting people to buy your Sox Fest tickets. I mean, think about this. I mean, I saw this today.
That's true.
I got an email today. They're still trying to sell. It's just a theater. Folks, it's just a theater. It's not the McCormick Center. It's not even the hotel that they used to have downtown, right? And all that capacity in the convention space and the autograph signing and everything else like that, and the marketplace for people to go and buy and sell baseball cards and memorabilia. Like it's not any of that. The size of this is so much smaller. This should have been sold out in hours, if not days. They still have both days available and all ticket options available for this thing. Like White Sox fans have soundly rejected the redone Sox Fest. That's how I feel. I mean, you have the holiday season. You announced it before the holidays. This is the perfect gift. I was gifted Sox Fest tickets plenty of times from family members, and my ex-wife did it one time. She gave me Sox Fest tickets as one of my gifts. It's the perfect thing for the gift giving season. When you're trying to figure out how to get somebody something and you don't feel like buying it all off of Amazon because it feels weird. And you're like, I got to do something unique. And they're not even getting that. A small couple hour a night thing that they haven't really given any details about what they're going to do. And Sox fans are rejecting it. And they're rejecting it because they don't believe anything you're telling them. They're not even, if you told them Luis Robert Jr. is showing up, I don't think it even increases ticket sales.
No, I honestly, I think, when we're even talking about his trade value and everything like that, calling him a superstar, and if Chris Getz is really treating him like
I don't think he is. I don't think Chris Getz is treating him as a superstar. I think that's why some people are in shock that he wants. Everybody's like, oh, he's getting rid of him because of his salary dump. I don't think it's as much of a salary dump as it is he doesn't like him. Like, I don't think Chris Getz likes him. Think about this. If you're a first-time general manager, you're going through a 121 loss season. You know that this was all set up by the guys before you. And I know everybody wants to say, well, he was in charge of player development. Again, he could have sat there until he was blue in the face and told Kenny Williams, this guy over here, even though he looks like an athlete, is not a good baseball player. You should be concentrating on this guy over here. And Kenny Williams would have told him, I can walk into a room and I can just spot a ball player. That's my gift.
Which Kenny Williams never produced anybody like that.
Supposedly it's his gift. If you listen to one of his more recent interviews, he says that. If it was true, we would have won a lot more games. But supposedly Kenny believes that's a gift. So when you're dealing with a guy like that, right? And the lawyer of Rick Hahn that really has no evaluation skills whatsoever, and he's shown that to us. He showed that to us. He has no evaluation skills when it comes to baseball player talent. Really good at making contracts, and that was about it, right? And if those guys are the guys that you have to convince, I can imagine it's pretty difficult to have any impact in the position that Getz was in. I feel like since he got in there, that's why he brought in all these guys from the outside, because he thought he was surrounded by morons. He's a guy who was working in there who was like, I'm a ball player. I can tell that this is garbage. And he's surrounded by morons. So he got rid of a lot of the morons and he brought in new guys. And so far, I don't think they're morons. I watched Brian Bannister talk about Garrett Crochet in an interview this week. And he basically said, like, that guy would have won the Cy Young if we wouldn't have held him back because of his innings. He would have won the Cy Young. And he goes through the whole process of how they dealt with Crochet. The idea that he was having a problem with late movement. Guys were catching up on one of his pitches when he was going inside. So they decided to add a cutter. He gave Ethan Katz credit for it in the interview for suggesting it. Crochet develops the cutter, and then they change something in his grip on the seams to give him extra movement on his fastball in the back end. I mean, they did that to Crochet to create what you saw this year. And he's like, the moment he's able to do more innings, that's a Cy Young. He's one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball. I wish we didn't have to get rid of him. So that tells you right now, they believe in Garrett Crochet. That answers the question. If you were wondering, like, did they believe in Crochet or didn't believe in Crochet? They believe in Crochet. They didn't believe in his ability to pitch deep in the season. He wasn't going to get long innings. Like, that wasn't going to happen. They believe that eventually that is going to happen for him. He just doesn't fit in their window. So the Bannister interview at least answers that question and also tells you that all these guys got brought in from the outside because they're doing something. They're having an impact. There's a different way of looking at things. And I think that you have a general manager who's not too keen on the center fielder that he watched not give his max effort. I think it was really an audition for next year. I think the GM was paying attention. I think that he really cared whether or not they lost 110 or lost 121. And when he saw guys not putting in the effort and he saw guys not able to perform, I think you lost favor with him, which goes back to my original point that just because he traded for Dominic Fletcher and Zach DeLoach, that didn't prevent him from going out and getting Mike Tauchman. And just because he traded for Miguel Vargas, if Miguel Vargas wasn't giving him what he thought he was going to get, I don't think he holds on to him and forces him down your throat. Like, the only exception to the rule seems to be the Andrew Vaughn arbitration thing. But again, it might just be because of the restrictions he's currently under from his owner. And he's got a hitting coach, a guy who he brought in Fuller, that says, I think I can fix him. So it's worth the $6 million. Because you're not going to get $6 million on another project for me because Jerry isn't going to give it to you. So just say, well, those darn arbitrators, and we can see what we can do. But I think that if Vaughn is failing halfway through the year, he won't be standing at first base. Just like I don't think Vargas has anything guaranteed coming out of spring. I don't think there's any guarantees on this team. That's what's going to make it very interesting. And that's why I also think he's not done adding pieces. They may not be big money pieces, but there's going to be one heck of a competition. I mean, like, we haven't had anything to watch, and we're not going to get to watch them play in October. They're not good enough for that. They're not going to challenge for a division. But I think one of the more interesting things is going to be what other pieces come walking in here and what are the battles going to be like. I mean, if you're interested in team building, I don't think it's a lost year for team building because I don't think we're going to run into what we ran into in previous years, which was, well, I traded for this guy, so I'm just going to stick with him no matter what. We penciled this guy in, so even though he's not performing, we're just going to keep him in there. I don't think we're going to see that. That's what's going to make the next couple months in spring really interesting.
Well, and one thing that you just sort of tap danced around, but I think you kind of hit on the head is the attitude is going to be a huge thing. Because what do we know about Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman? They play hard. They always have. Did Andrew Vaughn give up last year? No. He was still out there fighting for whatever it was worth. If you're seeing effort come out of spring training and you're seeing effort come out of winter ball and you're seeing effort come into this season and you're seeing effort put forward in the season, first of all, generally speaking, with effort comes some level of success, especially if he can improve their scouting and can improve what they can do. You know, if Will Venable and his staff are able to give them advanced scouts on the pitchers that they're facing so they know what they're facing, if they can be positioned correctly in the field for the batters, if the pitchers on the White Sox get scouting reports on the batters so they know how to attack them, you put guys in a position to succeed. They've all got some level of talent. You don't get to be in the majors or on the fringe of being in the majors without having some God-given talent here. But Chris Getz might very well be looking at this going, you know, first and foremost, if you sulk, if you're angry, if you're not trying to make it better, but you're just sitting there saying this sucks and this is worse, then I don't necessarily want you here, because Garrett Crochet, you're right, doesn't fit within their competition window. And there's already rumblings coming out of Boston that Garrett Crochet is going to be impossible to re-sign when the time comes, and that's for Boston's purposes. But what is the one thing that Garrett Crochet made clear last year? That he was going to, at the expense of the team, protect himself. And I don't fault him for that, but it's not what you say.
Right, and that's the thing. In the end, I think what Chris Getz is doing, and it's really all you can do, right? All you can do when the owner isn't going to spend money to fix the problem is to fix everything you can internally. You fix the structure. You get rid of the people that you don't agree with or you think are mooching off of the team. You get rid of the people that you think are getting in the way of making good decisions. You change the decision makers. You change the advisors. And then you go and attack the attitude on the bench and on the team. And that's what you do. You remove those people. I mean, if you look at it through that lens, you understand the Crochet trade. You understand the Luis Robert Jr. shopping. You even understand the Andrew Vaughn coming back, although it makes no sense. Because there's just so many things that need to be changed. So if my hitting guy believes in him, and he was trying last year when everybody else wasn't, then I at least want that, right? Like you make the decisions that you make. Again, it makes it so interesting. Right back at the beginning of the show, we brought it up. There are so many position battles already, and there are more guys that are going to come in. And whatever he brings in, they're going to be veteran players that you're going to be like, well, it's only for a $2 million or $3 million deal, but it's going to be a professional baseball player coming in. And I think that that's what this season's going to be about.
A professional baseball player, and probably somebody that when you read up on him, everyone's going to say, this guy's a gamer, he gives it his best.
Gets on base, battles at the plate.
Or battles on the mound if they bring in a pitcher.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. Battling.
Grindy.
We already have the catchphrase. If somebody called Brooks Boyer, Chicago White Sox baseball, battling.
That should be worth a couple tickets to the fake Sox Fest.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.